Greetings, YouTube. Recently, I read on the Big Purple they were talking about the Modrons, and someone said it was the worst monster in all of the entire history of D&D, and I don't think that's true. I actually have to think about that. What is the worst monster? That's a video in itself, I guess. And people were talking about how they redeemed them, if they liked them, they didn't like them, if they agreed with the, gamers talking about a topic. Hey, it's what we do. And I began to think about how I would use Modrons in a modern era. All right, so like if I were going to be running a P1 or a 5th edition game, which I would never do, but if I were going to run that, how would I use Modrons? And there are like 14 casts of Modrons, which is a little much for me. And the basic gist is that the more sides you have, they're supposed to be the higher up our hierarchy. And I actually thought about it for a second. I thought, well, one of my favorite things are platonic solids. And my favorite platonic solid is the dodecahedron, the 12-sided die. It is absolutely my favorite um, platonic solid. I have a sticker on my water bottle at work with one on it. I carry a D12 with me at work just because it makes me smile. I love the things. I've got them all over the place. I even have a D12 fidget spinner right here. It's a D12 fidget spinner. So what would I do if I were going to like kind of redo the Modrons? And I think there's really one of two tracks you go. First is kind of making them a relatively approachable species that could be integrated into your campaigns. And instead of having 14 casts, which I think that's just way too much to handle, too many moving bits for my taste, let's go with platonic solids. Except the number of the sides is reversed. So the largest of the platonic solids, we're going to have 12, we're going to go 12, 8, 6, 4, and a sphere. Okay, so we're just going to do 5 casts. So the largest of these, ones of the most, are the dodecahedrons there. They are the laborers. They are the people that do the most grunt work. Not, I guess they are people. They're sapient. They're the ones that do the grunt work. They are the ones that have the most limbs, like multiple limbs for different jobs, and they're ones that are most easily reprogrammed and rebuilt. They're constantly being reconstructed and reconfigured to do different things. And I would probably allow them to come in 3 different sizes, small, medium, and large, though the small and the mediums would be the ones that would be, guys, what are you doing? There are kittens and cats playing in the background. Stop that. One of who is older and one of who's far younger, and I don't want them to get hurt. But I like the idea of them being small and medium because they're construction jobs that require both. You know what I mean? There are times you need to get into small spaces and time you don't. And the larger ones would be more like construction vehicles. I don't really think that they would make great player characters. And they would probably be the least intelligent. So I think they would probably be the least interesting. But the next one up, you've got 8 sides. And those are the warriors. And those could be more interesting. You want to do fighter types? Here you go. They're the fighter type. All right. And I think that's, again, a very, I would probably keep them medium. They probably have large versions for like major battles, but then being large is not a great thing if you're going to be playing in your human scale world. Medium is probably the best way to go. But even a medium Modron is going to be awkwardly shaped because they are a platonic solid. They are an 8-sided die. That is not a shape that fits into many places. So you have a lot of role-playing opportunities. Trying to explain to people how they're just not going to be able to fit into certain spaces and stuff like that. There is a lot of potential for comedy here, and people did mention in the conversation on the Big Blue about how lots of folks look upon them as comedy, and I can see that. So the next stage up, you've got the cubes. Now the cubes are the engineers and the mechanics. They're the ones that repair and build the things that the society needs, that the Modron society needs. Someone also suggested that I don't know if it was suggested or they knew it from the lore, but that a group of Modron were known as a sum, which made me very much smile. So that's cute, sum. So you've got those that, to me, those would be one of the best of the Modron species to play. Again, they would probably come in both small and medium sizes, because if you're going to be doing engineering or mechanical work, getting into small places is something you may need to do. Um, and because they have a lot of variety, because they are skilled at things, they could be rogues, they could be stuff fighter types if you really wanted to. I think playing against type, they could be interesting bards, particularly if you find a Modron that has an affection for music. So a lot of the hands-on kind of stuff, the skill stuff, I think would fall under the category of the six-sided Modrons. Then you get the four-sided. Okay, now the four-sided are the designers. They're the wizards. They're the thinkers, the planners, the managers, the accountants. They're the ones that do the day-to-day operational level stuff that needs to be done to keep the Modron society functioning. And of course, that lends itself to priests and wizards, maybe even sorcerers. You could do with the bard route with that one as well. Um, so lots of different ideas that for that particular. Then at the tier, you have the sphere. Now the sphere is never going to be a player character. The sphere is the person in charge of this particular Modron colony, and they're the ones that are just they can't get out and about and do stuff because they are essentially the semi-divine being that runs the Modron culture. So I thought about this, and now, okay, so you've got this five-tier structure, and they're filling all kinds of different roles. They're doing all kinds of things, and most of them are lawful neutral. And so they're just kind of like doing their stuff. They follow orders. They build things. Maybe they're living on the plane of Mechanus itself. Maybe they're just a very rigid group to themselves. Maybe they've completely integrated themselves into the culture. For example, you could take a species that is currently in the core book, like say the gnomes. Take the gnomes out, no insult to gnomes, but you take the gnomes out because they're often viewed as the mechanical tinkerer types, and you put the Modrons in their place. Okay, that would be a way of seamlessly integrating them because now all the roles that were being played by the gnomes are now being played by the Modrons. Or you could just tack them on um, as another option and have all the core races the species that you already had. They fit particularly well into steampunk settings because let's face it, mechanical beings of oddly shapes clunking around your city, crawling up buildings and fixing things, and building sky ships and submarines. That's a very cool mental image to my mind. But the Primus, the one at the top with zero one side sphere, um, don't have the options of becoming adventurers. So to me, you could play them as serious or as comedic as you do any other of the species in your game. I mean, you can play goblins as dangerous infestations threatening the very foundations of society, or you play them as goofy characters. I've seen them done both. So, and you can, any species can be played as a stereotype for laughs, and that necessarily isn't a bad thing. Particularly if it's a player character who wants to do that. So that's a route I think that would allow you to play Modrons, have them be no better or worse than any of the other species. Simplify them by only having 5 tiers with the platonic solids, fewer sides determining how up you are in the hierarchy. Um, and that's a route I think anybody could find quite acceptable and playable. But I thought to myself, what if we try to make them implacable, pitiless threats? Machines. Machines that don't care about anything that aren't machines. So now we have Modrons, the same 5 levels of class of caste that I just mentioned, except they're Borg-like. Now, in the previous method of society I described, you can build a Modron, but the spark of life has to come through the Primus, the sphere at the top. They literally give the spark of life to the Modron, which then becomes a sentient being. Whether that's directly from them or they're channeling it from the plane of Mechanus, doesn't matter. They are the conduit that brings the spark to a Modron. But in this Borg version, there is no spark. The Borg Modrons cannot create their own life. They can, however, transfer life. So they can make the mechanical bodies, they can build Modrons, but they can't bring them to life without the soul of an organic being, a sapient organic being. So they are this scourge as they find their way into your prime plane, build a base, and begin picking off small colonies, farm here, a ranch there, a hamlet there, a village there, and then they've got enough members. Now they're going after a town or a city, and then they just become this plague that's just absolutely devouring the world, turning it into a perfectly rigid, ordered place without the chaos of organic life. Anything that is not Modron must be added. So here you have the Modron as an absolute threat. Now, the Modron don't see themselves as evil. They see themselves as doing what has to be done. They cannot produce more of their kind without the souls of other people. For them, that is just the way of the world. It's just the way it's always been, the way it always will be. Who knows when the Modron species started? Was it started by a god? Was it started by some mad researcher? Who knows? But now they're here, and they're slowly chewing their way through prime material plane after prime material plane, adding you to the Modron collective, whether you want to or not. Now, most people do not want to be kidnapped by the Modron and have their souls ripped out of their bodies and then shoved into a Modron body, where they will then spend the rest of eternity serving the implacable, pitiless Modron collective, going out and killing more organic beings. So there's going to be some resistance to this. There even may be folks that will be more than willing to kill themselves rather than be taken by the Modron. So not only do you have this as a threat, but you have a redemption arc. Because if the player characters can figure out a way to destroy the Modron in a specific manner, maybe not just kill them, but they have to do it in a special manner, they can free the soul. So maybe that they initially counter them and they're killing them, and they think, okay, we're eliminating this threat, but then they learn where the threat is coming from, what they're doing, they're stealing souls. So then they figure out how to, or somebody tells them how to free the soul of a Modron, and then they have to figure out a way how to get to the Primus to free all the Modron from this particular incursion that is being done in this area. And then, of course, if you want to take the campaign into epic levels, you start trying to go after the Modron in other realms that have already been conquered and freeing up their souls to return the world to a more natural, organic place like it is here. Well, not here, it's that building, but you get my point. So this is going to be a place where the most fervent opponents of the Modron are going to be like the Sylvan species, the elves and the Fey courts, things like that. They are going to be most vehemently against the Modron because they see themselves as having the most to lose, because it is their verdant, pristine, untouched forests and jungles and biomes that are a threat from this mechanical scourge. So here are two different versions of the Modron. One, which should be easily integrated into a campaign where anybody who wants to play a Modron is probably going to play a warrior or what are the 8, 6, or 4 sides. I can't imagine if you want to play a manual laborer. Maybe you do. That could be interesting as well. A small manual laborer would be interesting because they'd be able to fit into places that the medium size couldn't, because let's face it, 12-sided objects are not the most convenient. So that could still make an interesting player character with the right pro player behind it. And then you also have the Borg version, which is a really dangerous threat to organic life. They're here for your soul. They will turn you into an unthinking death machine that will then go out and absorb the souls of your friends and loved ones and your entire country. So that's a threat right there. So I think you can redeem the Modron in this manner. So this has been my thoughts on retooling the Modron. I would simplify the casts because I think 14 is way too much. And I would make them more approachable as player. I think that would make it more approachable as player characters and make them more acceptable as NPCs. And then again, a version I've just given you, which is where they are an implacable threat. So let's talk about Modrons, how we've used them in the past, how would you use them in the future, and which version do you use yourself? Do you use the 14 cast, or have you come up with your own cast system? Or is there only one kind of Modron? I don't know. The ideas are somewhat limitless because the Modron are a very flexible species. So let's talk about the Modron.